Six Nations, week number 3, game number 2. Scotland up against England from Murrayfield. Always a good rivalry between these two sides. Let's have a look at the squads which have been announced, some stats, some predictions, recent history, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. I think this is the tastiest of the 3 Six Nations fixtures this weekend, just because the other two games, Ireland and Wales, France and Italy, are predicted to be pretty lopsided affairs, whereas this one, between the 5th in the world England, 6th in the world Scotland, England 2 from 2, Ireland 1-1, but with, coming bloody close in that last game. There's a lot to like about it, and it feels like it could be a very close one. And traditionally, in recent times, their games have been exceptionally close. Scotland are bolstered by the return of Blair Kinghorn at fullback, which is a great bit of news. Suffered an injury which meant he missed the first 2 rounds of the championship, but having him back at fullback with that bit of pace, bit of skill, bit of X-factor, and a bit of height, I think will certainly help the Scottish cause. Kyle Steyn, who was initially named but missed out on the last game due to birth of a child, is back there on the right wing, and then Duhan van der Merwe is on the left wing. Duhan has only broken 3 tackles this year in the Six Nations. Only 2 games, but he's getting into some space. Scored a really nice try from a Finn Russell ball, but we're used to seeing Duhan running over people. In this fixture last year alone, he broke 11 tackles. So for Duhan to be 3 from 2, 3 defenders beaten from 2 games, is kind of low. We'll see if he's kind of able to up those numbers against England. Hugh Jones and Sione Tuipulotu continue on at 12 and 13. Hugh Jones has managed to win a couple of turnovers, which is great in his position. And Tuipulotu has been the most common kind of ball carrier from the Scots thus far. His ability to take the ball up into the line and get those late offloads away certainly is a great wee skill set. Finn Russell continues on as co-captain alongside Ben White. So between them 9 and 10, they have been putting a fair few kicks through. I think Finn Russell has kicked more than anyone else thus far, but it's not always just kicks long. It's a lot of little dinks. It's 50-22s, kicking into the space in the backfield. So this Scottish side has a pretty smart kicking game about them. It'll be interesting to see if they try and find some space beyond the kind of on-rushing English defence, which has been a lot talked about. Forwards-wise, Pierre, Schoeman, George Turner and Zander Fagerson continue on in the front row, so no changes there. And Schoeman, just quietly, 24 from 24 tackles is a hell of a start to the campaign for him. Gilchrist and Cummings continue on in the second row. And then Jamie Ritchie, after missing out in the last game, is back into the 23. Gregor Townsend kind of said this game suits him, suits his strength. So, yeah, from kind of out of the 23 to back to starting at number 6. Darge is the other co-captain at 7. And Dempsey continues on at 8. There's no Matt Fagerson in the 23 this week. Bench-wise, Ashman, Hepburn and Millar-Mills are the front row replacements. Same. Sam Skinner apparently scored a great try in training, which got the team applauding, I guess with reference to his denied try against France. He's still there on the bench. Andy Christie was kind of well talked up by Gregor after the last game to the point where people thought he might get a start, but it is still that bench role. Gregor said he's looking for that same kind of impact from him, and the fact that he covers the entire back row is also a kind of handy skill for a guy to have on the bench. 3 backs on the bench with the likes of George Horne, Ben Healy and Cam Redpath, so no spot for Kyle Rowe, despite the fact that I think he is their top guy for defenders beaten thus far in the championship. But yeah, that is the Scottish squad for this home game at Murrayfield. For England, the biggest change is probably also at fullback. I mean, this time it's not like a guy coming back from injury. It's just Furbank in for Freddie Stewart. I haven't been able to see, as I sit here recording this, the press conference with Steve Borthwick just yet, but it may be in response. I mean, he's just been playing well for Northampton, which could be it could be just simple as that. But also, I think the fact that Scotland thus far haven't been like a really kind of high ball team, which is what Freddie Stewart's great at defending. Like, I mean, if you're looking at Freddie Stewart's numbers, he's got the most run meters for England. He's the fullback, so he gets a lot of them kind of for free, which maybe makes sense, but he's getting a lot of run meters and he's beaten 8 defenders, which is more than anybody else for England thus far in the Six Nations, albeit only 2 games. But he's been playing well. So it's an interesting call to see Stewart drop. But Furbank, maybe a slightly better kicking game, maybe a bit more agile. Like, Stewart is maybe not as kind of... He's great under the high balls, but maybe he's not as good at kind of scampering wide to field those Scottish kicks. I will be looking out for Steve Borthwick's press conference between now and kickoff time to see what he has to say if he got asked about it. Tommy Freeman's there on the right wing. He's been putting up cracking numbers as well. 100 run metres thus far from him. 7 defenders beaten, 3 clean breaks, just behind Stewart's numbers on attack. And Elliot Daly continues on the left. Ollie Lawrence is also one of the additions back into the 23. I love seeing that guy at 12. Just such a block-busting ball carrier. I look forward to seeing how he goes alongside Henry Slade. And then Danny Kerr gets the nod at 9 with Alex Mitchell being injured alongside George Ford. So, yeah, pretty steady. But, I mean, the Furbank one is probably the biggest call of the lot. Forwards-wise, Genge is back into the starting lineup alongside Dan Cole. So it's kind of swapsies for the props. The guys who started last week or a fortnight ago are down to the bench, and the bench guys are starting. Jamie George continues to captain the side. Number 2, Maro Itoje and Ollie Chisholm continue on in the second row. Itoje has 22 from 22 tackles, and he's won a couple of turnovers, so he is doing his Maro Itoje defensive powerhouse thing. Ethan Roots, Sam Underhill, Ben Earl, the same back row. Roots maybe not quite as high impact as he was in that first game, but he's still proved himself to be pretty useful at international level from the 2 games we've seen of him. Ben Earl has more carries than anybody else for England thus far in the Six Nations with 26. He's also been very busy. Bench-wise, Theo Dan, Marler and Stewart who dropped to the bench. George Martin is also back fit, so great to see him there. And the number 19 jumper, Chandler Cunningham-South, also continues on as the loose forward replacement, and 3 back replacements with Ben Spencer coming into the 23. So it's a very experienced couple of 9s in the squad. Finn Smith and then Manny Feyi-Waboso continues on as well. I'm still hoping he gets a start at some point, but we will have to see how Steve goes with his selections. Stats-wise for these teams, I mentioned the Scottish kicking. The Scots have kicked more than England, which is something which, when Steve Borthwick took over, England have tended to lead the way in kicking stats, but Scotland have more pure kicks from hand. But like I said, you can't just look at those numbers and think they're just always kicking it long. Scotland have a very mixed and kind of varied kicking game, but England is second behind Scotland for kicks. So both sides put a bit of boot to ball. They've had the most run meters behind Ireland, the Scots, so they do like a bit of attacking play, but it's the defenders beaten number, which is still surprising. I mentioned it specifically with Van der Merwe, but as a team, Scotland aren't busting tackles. They used to be one of the best teams for that last year, whereas from 2 games, they are at the bottom of the table for defenders beaten, which is unusual. They're usually able to kind of crack on with that. But the goal kicking's been good. It's at 100%. And as one of the journalists mentioned, the final 20 minutes for Scotland, I mean, they'll argue the point for that last game, but they haven't scored any points in the final 20 minutes across the first 2 games, and yet they have conceded 24. So the final 20 from 2 games, which can't read too much into, has not been great for Scotland thus far. England have kicked the most penalties of the Six Nations thus far with 7, so they're happy to keep the scoreboard ticking over from George Ford's boot, and they have conceded, there's been a lot of talk about their defence, conceded very few run meters, only 577. Ireland have better defensive numbers than England in that regard, but remember, Ireland like to keep possession. But other teams, in terms of run meters conceded, are like 600, 700 plus. So England is good at limiting the amount of running game oppositions can have at them from 2 games. Their line-out's been at 92%, which is better than the Scottish one, which is in the 70s. That being said, England's own run meters are kind of low. They're only ahead of Italy, and they have had the fewest offloads in the Six Nations by a mile. Everybody offloads a lot more than England. So, yeah, some fans still not happy with the way Steve Borthwick is running the squad. But hey, man, 2 from 2. We'll see if they're able to make it 3 from 3 up at Murrayfield. The recent history would suggest not, because of the last 5 games, England's only won the 1. And of the last 3, they're all Scottish wins. But they're all pretty tight games. 29-23 last year, 20-17 the year before, 11-6 the year before. And then England's win back in 2020 was 13-6. So they're pretty tight games. Then you got the 1 draw, which was that bonkers 38-38 game. That's very much an exception. These Scotland-England games tend to be low scoring. Teams tend to be kept below 30 points. They're traditionally, at least in recent times, bit of an arm wrestle. Average score is 21-19 to the Scots, so pretty close across the last 5 games. And the predictions reflect that. The bookies are saying Scotland by 4, and the Rugby Forecast algorithm saying Scotland by 5. So kind of predicted to be within 1 score at the death. It is on at Murrayfield. It's a 4:45 kickoff, so late afternoon. 5:45 for me here in New Zealand, but I'll have been up a stupid o'clock to watch the previous game, Ireland-Wales, anyway, but I'll certainly grab myself a coffee for this one. Andrew Brace from Ireland is the ref. Fingers crossed he has a good game and we don't have to have a kind of 5-minute TMO stoppage to end the game between these teams, but I do hope it is a close one. You guys let us know your thoughts. If you want England rugby gear, check out England Rugby Store down in the description. They were having a sale on last I checked for replica England gear, so check that out. But yes, England, Scotland, Scotland, England. How do you guys see this one going? You guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.